Good evening. It is time for the Iman Report. It is Sunday, October October 4th, 2020. It is now time to recap the week 4 in the NFL. We'll start off with the Sunday night football game between the 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, this is one where everybody called for quarterback controversy after the 49ers beat the Giants. Maybe not so fast after tonight's performance. Nick Mullins really put up a stinker tonight. Against the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 turnovers, threw a pick six, and was replaced in the fourth quarter by C.J. Beathard. Tonight's game, defense was okay in this game, but it's reached the point now where the 49ers need to get Jimmy Garoppolo back. They need to get Richard Sherman back. They need to get Mosley back. They need to get Ahkello Witherspoon back. Dante Johnson just doesn't cut it at corner. Jason Verrett has his limitations. And this was a rare night where Kyle Shanahan did not have his best night coaching. He fed it to McKinnon way too many times when he could have used Jeff Wilson Jr. He could have used JaMycal Hasty. So this is a team loss. I think Shanahan got outcoached. His coaching has to be better against the Miami Dolphins. On the flip side, Philadelphia came in hungry. Philadelphia was desperate for a win. Now at 1-2-1, all of a sudden they are back in the playoff race, where in the NFC East, 7 wins might just be enough to win that weak division. They did rough up Carson Wentz. Wentz did throw an interception. This game was won by the Philadelphia defense. And pretty much, I think this was pretty much a game where Jim Schwartz was battling for his job. And now that seat got a little more safe after tonight's win. As I said, it's only going to take 7 wins, but, that's all it's going to take. Wentz was good enough to win the game. He didn't cost too many. He cost less turnovers, so Philadelphia gets the W. As for the Niners, they need to get Jimmy G back. They need reinforcements back. The schedule's going to get a lot tougher for the Niners. Let me take a look at the Eagles' schedule. As for the Eagles coming up now that it doesn't get any easier. They get Pittsburgh. They get Baltimore. Then they play divisional foes, which should get easier, so we shall see what happens as they play Baltimore and Pittsburgh in the next 2 weeks. Now on to the Thursday night game. In what was the Thursday night toilet bowl, the Denver Broncos beat the New York Jets 37-28. Brett Rypien beat Sam Darnold, and both quarterbacks were pretty beat up. 3 interceptions, and Melvin Gordon rushes for 100 yards. But until Drew Lock comes back, it looks like Rypien's going to be the guy. Unless Blake Bortles is ready, but Drew Lock might be back in another week or two, so that's really good news for. So that is good news for the Broncos. For the Jets, Darnold's not the guy. Roughed up 6 times. Bruised his collarbone, came back in. But it's just becoming more and more clear at this point that Sam Darnold's not the answer. The Jets are the worst team in the NFL. And Adam Gase is going to get fired at some point, but it's not going to be Greg Williams that replaced him. Greg Williams is looking like Bounty Gate's back. Things have not looked great. The Jets are a total mess, and they need culture change. Now to today's games. The Seattle Seahawks go to 4-0 in the NFC West, beating the Miami Dolphins 31-23. Seattle looks like they are going to be the team to beat in the NFC West. Russell Wilson was Russell Wilson today, putting up MVP numbers again. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And for Miami, after the Niners, there are some wins coming for Miami. I don't think Miami is as bad as they look. Fitzpatrick threw 2 picks. At some point, probably in another week or 2, we will probably see Tua play quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. But DK Metcalf had a great game. David Moore had a great game, scored a touchdown. And Bobby Wagner was the stud for the Seattle defense today. Devontae Parker, 110 receiving yards. We'll see if he gets traded at the deadline or not. But not much to take away from this. Seattle's the class. Miami, I think once the schedule becomes a bit more cupcake for Miami, I do see some wins coming for Miami in the future, so I think Miami could be more of a 5 to 6 win team this year. I like what Brian Flores has done. They're still a year or 2 away from contending in Miami.
With 3 receivers right, a 4-man rush.
Congratulations to Joe Burrow as the Cincinnati Bengals get their first win of the year. First career win for Joe Burrow. 25 for 36, 300 passing yards. Joe Mixon, 151 rushing yards. He finally breaks loose for some running today. Minshew was not too terribly bad. Took 3 sacks, picked off once, but he threw for 351 yards. The defense was just horrible today for Jacksonville, as Jacksonville falls to 1-3, and Cincinnati trending up, Jacksonville trending down. I feel like Doug Marrone is 1 game closer to being fired. In Houston, the Minnesota Vikings get the win over the Houston Texans. And this is Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson went off on the terrible Texans defense. And Dalvin Cook runs for over 130 yards. In this one, Kirk Cousins throws for 260 yards. A 127.1 passer rating. And for Houston, this is red alert territory, losing to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are not that great of a team this year. You know, this is one where Cal McNair has to be starting to sound alarm bells if Cal McNair cares. But at this point, the Texans may have to mull. But I don't think Bill O'Brien should be coaching after this season in Houston. They need to bring in a fresh face, a GM, and a head coach. And this now the pressure's on Cal McNair to make the right changes in Houston. And from here, I just don't think Bill O'Brien is the right coach. Bill O'Brien's seat just went to scalding hot after today. Whereas Spielman might have bought himself a little bit more rope in Minnesota. In Arlington, the Cleveland Browns beat the Dallas Cowboys 49-38. Cleveland 3-1. And you know what? Yes. I think it's time to start considering the Browns as a wildcard team this year. Odell Beckham had a good game. Jarvis Landry had a good game. Dearness Johnson almost rushes for 100 yards today. But Mike McCarthy has to stop trying to kill Dak Prescott's arm. Quarterbacks are not made to throw for 58 times in a game. 502 yards is nice. But you got to get Ezekiel Elliott running the football if you're Dallas. Dallas has problems. And Mike McCarthy has to let Ezekiel run the football. Mike Nolan looks like a terrible defensive coordinator for Dallas. He needs to maybe simplify the game. Dallas should be considering making a call to Earl Thomas this week. Dallas' season could be in danger of falling off the rails, especially if Philadelphia can start rattling off some wins. Lucky for Dallas, there are 4 winnable games coming up. But for Cleveland, they might be 9-7. They might be 10-6. 9 wins is going to be good enough is likely going to be good enough for Cleveland to get into the playoffs. Baker Mayfield is not an... But one thing is more clear than ever. When home is all you have. Baker Mayfield is... God, son of a bitch.
From the 50.
Baker Mayfield's not an elite quarterback, but Cleveland's defense sometimes has been good, but good enough, I'll say. And Odell Beckham Jr. has gotten better. The Browns can run the football. If they can get to 9-7, they are going to be a wild card team this year. Dallas just got to find a way to get to 7-9. If Dallas can get to 7-9, that might be just good enough for them to win the East. This team has problems. They're no longer a lock to win this division. In Washington, Lamar Jackson gets right as the Ravens beat up on the Washington football team 31-17. This was one of the better games for Dwayne Haskins as he throws for over 300 yards. Lamar ran for 53 yards. Marquise Brown, 4 receptions. Mark Andrews, 3 receptions, 2 touchdowns. But at some point, Washington's going to start getting wins. This team is starting to look better under Ron Rivera, and I think culture change is already starting to happen in DC. Baltimore, don't write them off yet. This was a good game to get them back on track after getting dominated by the Kansas City Chiefs. They get a winnable game against the Bengals next week. They get the Eagles before the schedule starts getting tougher. The New Orleans Saints beats the Detroit Lions 35-29, and both Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murphy has good games running the football today. And Drew Brees looked a little more like vintage Drew Brees today. And Detroit looked more like Detroit today. Matthew Stafford, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Trade the man. If Detroit wants to do good for Matthew Stafford, trade him. What good grace I gave for Detroit last week went out the window this week. Detroit's looking like the same old Lions. Probably Patricia and Quinn will be gone after this season. Hopefully. But it's time to move on from... It's honestly time to trade high on Matthew Stafford. Get him to a contender. Change the culture in Detroit. Detroit's... It might be the quarter pole, but I feel like Detroit's season might be done. In Carolina, Matt Rule has something good going on for the Panthers. The Panthers beat the Cardinals 31-21 in a game where Kenyon Drake is shut down yet again. And now you got to start questioning the coaching of Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury, not the greatest. I've always questioned the hire for Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think he was ever a great coach to begin with. He was fired from Texas Tech for a reason. But Matt Rule exposed him today as the fraud he was. Matt Rule has Carolina playing over their heads. And nobody expected Carolina to be 2-2 after 4 games. Bridgewater looking like a good quarterback today. 26 for 37, 276 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. Mike Davis and Reggie Bonifon was able to run the football successfully. Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel looking pretty good. But this is what good coaching does. Matt Rule knows how to elevate a team. Good coaching can elevate a team. Bad coaching, the jury's still out on Cliff Kingsbury, but I've never been sold on him as an NFL head coach. And Arizona 2-2, they're looking more like a pretender than a contender. They should be 4-0 by now. And the schedule's about to get tougher for the Cardinals, so there could be a good chance we see Cliff Kingsbury on the hot seat by the time this season ends. I don't, the only, DeAndre Hopkins was shut down today, Christian Kirk. This team was supposed to be better than that, and Kenyon Drake has been AWOL most of the season in Arizona. In Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers come back to beat the Los Angeles Chargers 38-31. Justin Herbert looked excellent today, 20 for 25, 290 passing yards. It's time for Anthony Lynn to say Justin Herbert is my guy going forward. He should not even think about going back to Tyrod Taylor. But the defense has looked terrible for the Chargers the last few games. And the Chargers might just simply be too talented to be 1-3. They did lose Austin Eckler to injury, which is not good. Ronald Jones ran for 111 yards, and Tom Brady looked like vintage Tom Brady, throwing for 5 touchdowns. Whereas early on, it looked like the Chargers were going to win this one. And Mike Evans had a touchdown, 7 receptions, 122 receiving yards. And I feel like this is a team where this might be the loss that gets Anthony Lynn on the hot seat. I feel like maybe in 2021, the Chargers should hire a coach that will work with Justin Herbert. A coach that likes Justin Herbert. A coach that will win with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert deserves better than Anthony Lynn right now. In LA, this was one where the Rams came out flat and still won. Goff did not turn the ball over and was a game manager. Henderson and Brown were shut down. Daniel Jones, no touchdowns, 1 interception, sacked 5 times. This game got chippy towards the end with Golden Tate and Jalen Ramsey caught fighting after the game. Oh, I think the NFL is really going to frown upon that, as we could see suspensions handed out, and I honestly think both Tate and Ramsey each should be suspended for a game, at least a game, maybe 2 games, but anything less than a game check is not enough punishment. This fight reminded me of Michael Crabtree and Aqib Talib a few years ago in the Oakland-Denver game. Dumb, selfish, and stupid. There were no winners. This was personal vendetta. NFL should make an example of them, suspend them for 2 games. Maybe a game on appeal. Now on to Las Vegas. Josh Allen is for real. Josh Allen, 24 for 34, 288 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 115.8 passer rating. Derek Carr threw for over 300 yards. Buffalo was good enough to shut down Josh Jacobs today. Stephon Diggs, over 100 receiving yards today. Darren Waller back. Hunter Renfrow back. But the injuries were just too much, as Buffalo is now 4-0, and it is time to start talking about Buffalo being a legitimate AFC East contender. Las Vegas going through the difficult stretch of their schedule right now. Things don't get any easier for them next week as they head to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs, a Chiefs team that has had ownage on the Raiders since Andy Reid's been running the team. And I don't think things are going to change anymore next Sunday. In a defensive low-scoring game in Chicago, the Indianapolis Colts beat the Chicago Bears 19-11. Indianapolis might just be good enough to be a wild card team. Frank Reich is a good coach. Chicago has a quarterback problem. Nick Foles, 26 for 42, 249 passing yards, 76.4 passer ratings. Today we saw the real Nick Foles We saw the real Nick Foles show up today. The bad Nick Foles. The Nick Foles we all come to know the last few years. Chicago might be an imposter at 3-1. Unless Chicago can learn to run the football. That's the only way Chicago is going to be able to win games from here on out. Chicago might be smart to go back to Trubisky. Trubisky is the better quarterback. Use Trubisky's legs. That's all I've got to say about that. But Ryan Pace should lose his job at the end of the year. Ryan Pace should not be allowed to draft another quarterback. The new GM should find the next quarterback in next year's draft for Chicago. I don't think Chicago is a playoff team. And now Chicago's weaknesses have been exposed, and Chicago's got to find a way to run the football if they want any chance of making the playoffs. Well, hopefully everybody has a good night. We'll be back next week for more of the Iman Report for Week 5. Actually, we might come on tomorrow to do a preview of the ALDS. Good night.